Good day everyone, we are the Group 3 and we are going to discuss about the Chapter 4, the organizational context. So for the introduction, kung yung last chapter was about analyzing the external environment of hospitality and tourism organizations, dito naman we will talk about the internal environment. So this chapter will help you to evaluate the influence of an organization's internal environment on strategy formation and implementation. It will also explain how different factors in an organization's external environment influence the internal environment and the functioning of an organization. So yung una is about yung relationship between the internal environment and the strategies formulated by the company. Then the second one naman will talk about how the internal environment and the operations of the business are affected by the external environment. So identifying different stakeholders. So one of the main concerns of today's hospitality and tourism organizations is how to manage the interests of different stakeholder groups in its environment. So if magpaplano ang isang manager sa mga courses of action na gagawin niya, it is very important na mayroon siyang ideas kung ano ang behavior ng external and internal environment. Sabi dito, managers must have some ideas about how key players both in the external environment and in their organizations will act and respond to changes and challenges. That's why nagiging importante na kayang alamin at i-analyze ng isang manager yung mga needs, expectations, and possible responses ng bawat stakeholders. So, sino nga ba ang stakeholders? According to Freeman, 1984, a stakeholder is any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of a firm's objectives. So they are the people who are involved sa operations ng business, kaya they can contribute para ma-achieve ng company ang goals nito and also be benefited by this accomplishment. Magbe-benefit sila dun sa mga accomplishment na yun. To meeting the needs of this groups, merong tatlong general questions about stakeholders. The first one is, who are they? This question concerns their attributes. Second one is, what do they want? Which concerns their ends. And lastly, how are they going to try to get it? Which concerns their means. So pag sinabing, who are they? This includes the long lists of different types of stakeholders. Pwedeng ito yung mga customers, yung shareholders, yung employees, suppliers, bankers, community and environmental groups, or employee unions within the company. So, yung mga tao na to, they can directly affect yung strategic direction na tatahakin ng isang organization. Kasama sila sa company, kaya may kakayahan silang makontrol or magamit yung mga resources based sa interests nila. Second one, what do they want? So this refers sa iba't ibang interest naman ng mga stakeholders na maaaring may iba't ibang expectations din. For example, the ultimate interest of shareholders is economic welfare. O kaya naman, ang main purpose nila is to gain profit. In other words, this just refer sa objectives ng iba't ibang stakeholders mentioned earlier. So yung last naman is, how are they going to try to get it? So, paano nila maisa sa katuparan yung needs at interest nila? Siyempre, with consideration sa kung gaano lang kalaki yung influence nila or yung position nila, kung gaano lang kalaki yung sakop ng power nila ng isang stakeholder sa isang company. So, stakeholder interests are the foundation of corporate strategy itself, representing what we are and what we stand for as a company. Siyempre, dahil sila yung bumubuo sa company, they themselves represent it. Kung ano yung interests nila, doon magbe-base ng kung anong direction ang tatahakin ng company. Organizations therefore need to establish certain fundamental principles that guide how it does business, particularly with respect to how it treats stakeholders, and then use those principles to drive decision-making. So, dapat daw, merong pinanghahawakan na principle ng isang company. That principle will guide them sa mga decisions na pipiliin nila. For example, mataas ang pagpapahalaga ng Jollibee sa mga customers nila. So, as they continue with their everyday operations, minimake sure nila na fresh yung mga pagkain, laging bagong luto, then magalang yung mga staffs. Magalang yung mga staffs nila. So, yung principle nila is to treat their customers as their top priority. So, kahit anong decisions ang need nilang gawin, parang main consideration nila yung interest ng customers. So the next is organizational functions, which influence an organization's ability to respond to the changes in the dynamic external environment. So organizational functions can be divided into 4 main areas. The first one is the operations function, which deals with the day-to-day operations of the system. They make sure na may reliable na systems and procedures ang isang business to ensure na kaya nilang i-provide at i-maintain ang kalidad ng mga products and services nila. The second one is marketing function, which deals with the management of demand by developing and implementing appropriate pricing policies and running marketing campaigns and programs sa pamamagitan ng different channels like television, sa magazine, at saka sa internet. The marketing function is concerned with reaching out to customers, investors, or to the community while projecting a positive image for the brand. For example, luxury product yung binibenta ng isang company. How will they encourage yung mga buyers na bilhin yun kahit medyo pricey siya? O kaya naman, paano nila i-guarantee na kahit mura yung product nila, maganda pa rin yung quality? The next is human resources function, which carries out a careful analysis on how human assets of an organization add value to the organization and contribute to the sustainable competitive advantage. So the human resources function naman is concerned sa mga employees and staffs, mula sa pag-hire ng new employees, dealing with their concerns, training, or sa pagbibigay ng rewards. In other words, they are the ones assigned with ensuring the welfare of the workers and making sure na they are doing their job properly, thus making them a valuable asset that will boost the competitive advantage of the business. Last one naman is the finance function, which is concerned about identifying the main sources of funding and financing the operations of an organization in a cost-effective way. To simply put, they are in charge of gathering, pati sa pag-handle ng mga funds. Sila din yung nag-allocate kung ilang percent ba ng funds yung i-distribute sa mga departments ng company while making sure na hindi kulang or sobra-sobra yung mga funds. So when carrying out an internal analysis of a hospitality and tourism organization, it is important na i-analyze yung 4 na areas na to at alamin alin dito yung kailangan i-improve, alin dito yung nagsiserve as edge or advantage ng isang company sa mga competitors nila. So in short, alamin yung mga strengths and weaknesses nila. Next one is the resources, core competencies, and distinctive competencies. So hospitality and tourism organizations should first identify their tangible and intangible resources. Pag sinabing tangible, ito yung mga nakikita at yung mga nahahawakan na assets ng organization, which can be seen in the form of a plant, equipment, and land. For example, yung building mismo ng isang hotel company can be identified as a tangible asset. Next is intangible assets naman. Ito yung mga hindi nakikita or mga hindi nahahawakan ng mga assets, which is associated with the company's know-how and skill sets. Pag sinabing know-how, it refers to the company's expertise and knowledge. They have no physical presence but represent real benefit to the organization. Example nito is yung reputation ng company or yung product brand nila. Can also be their employee skills, expertise, yung company culture, yung suppliers, and even yung networks ng company. With regards to these assets, core capabilities and distinctive competencies are built on tangible and intangible assets. So, pag sinabing tangible, ano yung meron yung company? And then, yung intangible, ano yung kakayahan ng company? This means na nakadepende yung kakayahan at advantages ng company sa kung ano lang yung resources na meron sila at sa kung anong skills yung taglay nila para ma-utilize yung mga assets na to. Core capabilities refers to those areas that a hospitality and tourism company does exceedingly well, whereas distinctive competencies refer to those areas and activities that a hospitality and tourism company excels at and is better than its competitors. So core capabilities are the most critical and most distinctive assets an organization possesses. Ito yung mga qualities na unique sa isang organization. That's why they are the most difficult to copy or to imitate ng ibang company, especially if matagal na itong naka-incorporate sa processes at work culture ng company. So hospitality and tourism organizations need to combine all this special knowledge and skills that set them apart sa mga competitors and apply ito sa business processes nila, like kung paano sila mag-render ng services, kung paano sila mag-manufacture ng product, or just apply all these special attributes on how they run their operations. Dahil nga sa panahon ngayon, madaming companies ang nag-o-offer ng mga magkakamukhang products lang or services. Tapos kapag may bagong in-offer yung isa, madami yung mga gumagaya. That's why hospitality and tourism organizations need to protect, exploit, and enhance their unique, intangible assets. Kailangan parang i-highlight at i-maximize ng isang company yung unique attributes nila while also making sure na hindi ito basta-basta nagagaya ng competitors nila. While competitive advantage is obtained by appealing to customers in targeted markets, sustainable competitive advantage is the result of developing and combining several distinctive competencies which are eventually difficult to imitate and substitute by competitors. To better explain this issue, we need to refer to the research-based view or RBV in the strategic management field, which suggests that competitive advantage comes from a firm's unique intangible and tangible resources. So in order for a resource to be a competitive advantage, it must be first valuable, second rare, third inimitable, and fourth non-substitutable. And syempre yung firm dapat nakadesign yung operations nila in a way that they can utilize these resources effectively and efficiently. So, a resource is considered valuable if may natutulong ito sa performance ng company. For example, may lupain sa Manila ang isang hotel, magiging or consider lang na valuable ito kung nagagamit siya sa operations ng business. Kapag naman sinabing rare, isa or kaunting company lang yung meron nun. For example, yung mga unique shows and attractions ng World Disney, pwede siyang i-consider na rare resources kasi sila lang yung nag-o-offer ng ganun. Para naman hindi magaya or ma-imitate yung assets, companies need to do well in different areas and connect all their resources and competencies with one another. Kapag kasi connected yung mga resources na to, mas mahirap siyang gayahin. Kasi this will mean that parang they have to imitate the company as a whole. Mas complex, mas mahirap kopyahin. For example, Pfeffer noted that Southwest Airlines' competitive advantage greatly comes from several closely related areas: very well-trained, productive, and dedicated workforce and managers, a positive and caring organizational culture, a relatively flat organizational structure, and a strong service delivery culture. So over the years, Southwest Airlines has managed to use fewer employees per aircraft, fly more passengers per employee, and supply more available seat miles per employee. The company has won the Triple Crown Award for fewest lost bags and fewer passenger complaints. In other words, a combination of great organizational culture, well-trained and dedicated employees, a healthy organizational culture, and a high level of customer service has created a sustainable competitive advantage for Southwest Airlines that are considered rare, difficult to imitate, and unique.
Good morning everyone, I am J. Marie A. Machas and I'm going to discuss the influence of leadership and influence of organizational culture. Influence of leadership. Every hospitality and tourism organization has key individuals, leaders with skills, ability, and vision to nurture and enable the organization to develop a business strategy, identify the resources required, and nurture other employees to turn their ideas into business reality. Lahat ng tourism and hospitality organizations ay nangangailangan ng isang leader na kayang pamunuan at i-lead ang kanyang mga employee. Kailangan din na ang isang leader ay nagtatangi ng characteristics ng isang nararapat na leader. Yung expertise, talent, yung ability, and yung magandang vision ay dapat nakikita at naia-apply nito into actions and performance na ipapakita sa mga employee. And syempre para sa growth and development ng organization. Mahalagang nagagampanan ng isang leader yung position niya kasi nakakaapekto to sa performance and stability ng organization. And at some point, nai-influence yung mga employees. It means na natututo sila and maaaring ma-apply nila to sa kanilang duty or work. Kailangan din daw na yung isang leader ay may malawak na pag-iisip at pananaw at yung ability to think creatively and intuitively. Kadalasan yung mga leader na to ay nakikita as exceptional individuals kasi they can come up with creative ideas and strategies that can bring changes in the organization. Masasabi ring magaling silang magplano at may kakayahang i-implement ito ng naaayon sa objectives ng organization. Organizations need the input of leaders because they are usually very capable of introducing innovative solutions to solve the organization's problems. Na-share nila yung mga ideas, thoughts, and advice sa kinakaharap na problema ng isang organization. Siyempre, hindi lang sila yung nagsasalita o nagbibigay ng ideas. Kailangan din na napapakinggan nila yung mga ideas and suggestions ng mga employee kasi part pa rin sila ng organization at malaki yung contribution nila sa growth ng organization. Kailangan sinasama rin sila sa decision making or napapakinggan yung panig nila. Yung mga leaders naman, sila yung mga initiator o yung nangunguna sa isang gawain or action para sa pagresolba ng problema at sa continuous change ng organization. Leaders can facilitate organizational learning by bringing business opportunities to the attention of other organizational members and networking externally with both suppliers and customers. They have the ability to sense the dynamic changes in the internal and external environments. Sila rin yung namumuno sa internal environment ng kanilang organization and dun sa mga stakeholders such as the customers and suppliers. The outcome of their efforts is innovative solutions to the organization's problems and new and imaginative means to deal with changes in their environment. Sila rin yung nag-a-assess ng risk sa organization at sa mga foreign operations and transactions na ginagawa ng organization nila. Very hands-on din sila lalo na kapag may problema yung organization nila. They utilize their creative and flexible thinking, risk-taking, and ultimately risk-reducing skills. Next naman is yung different leadership styles such as authoritative, persuasive, consultative, and participative decision-making. Sa authoritative, dito nasa leader yung kabuuang pagkontrol sa organization. Ibig sabihin, sila yung unang namumuno sa pagsaset ng specific goals na nais nilang ma-achieve. Sila yung nagko-control and nagmamanage ng activities and transactions, kabilang na rin yung mga process and methods kung paano ma-achieve yung sinet nilang goals without the help of other members of the organization. Kung meron naman ay maliit lamang yung porsyento ng partisipasyon na galing sa kanila. Next is persuasive. Sila naman yung mga leader na nagko-convince sa mga employees to do something for the organization, like sharing their ideas and suggestions. Dito, very interactive yung leaders sa mga members to convince them. Next is consultative. Dito naman kinoconsult ng leader yung mga employees to get their ideas, opinions, and suggestions na makakatulong sa pagpormula ng strategies and decision making. Kadalasan naman, nangyayari to sa isang meeting, team building, or seminar that uses the skills of their employees to create strategic plans and make decisions. Then, the last one is participative decision making. Dito naman, lahat ng employees ay binibigyan ng opportunity to be part of the decision making and share their ideas, opinions, and suggestions para sa project ng kanilang organization. For example, kailangan yung ideas nila sa pagpopromote ng product or services na ilalabas nila. But regardless of these leadership styles, yung decision making, yung implementation ng strategies para sa success ng organization ay nakadepende pa rin sa background, skills, and abilities ni leader. Leaders should make a personal commitment to support innovative ideas. Isa sa mga katangian ng isang leader is yung commitment niya sa work niya para sa growth and success ng business through supporting innovative ideas. Leadership should undertake the role of creating a supportive culture where new ideas are nurtured and encouraged. And they should also see themselves as supporters of their subordinates. Supportive culture is a flexible organizational structure that allows the whole organization to express trust and commitment to their employees. In addition, while developing and implementing new ideas and managing change in the organizations, mahalagang ma-implement ng leaders yung persuasive communication, negotiation, and listening skills in order to discover the interests, needs, and commitment of their employees. There is relatively high turnover in leadership position in hospitality and tourism organization. For example, Burger King had over 12 chief executive officers from the early 1990s to 2006. When a new CEO begins working, it is possible that there will be changes in organizational direction, structure, and culture. Then, ang susunod naman ay influence of organizational culture. According to Guerrier and Deary in 1998, Kemp and Dwyer in 2001, Rofer, Brooks, and Hampton in 1997, organizational culture is another important factor that shapes the strategic direction of an organization and thus the behaviors of the employees. It is a holistic, historically determined, socially constructed, shared organizational variable made up of symbols, heroes, rituals, and values. Symbols are words, gestures, pictures, or objects that carry particular meaning in a culture. Heroes are persons, alive or dead, real or imaginary, who possess characteristics highly prized in the culture and who serve as models for behavior. Rituals naman are collective activities that are technically useless but are socially essential within a culture. Symbols, heroes, and rituals can be observed under the term practices because they are visible to an observer. Although yung cultural meaning ay nakadepende sa kung paano sila nakikita or naiintindihan ng mga gumagamit or naniniwala dito. The core of culture is formed by values in the sense of broad, non-specific feelings of good and evil, beautiful and ugly, normal and abnormal, rational and irrational. Values describe what the employees in an organization believe should be, and practices describe what they feel at the moment. Yung values, it serves as a guide for human behavior. Kadalasan na-adapt nila yung values nila sa lugar na kung saan sila lumaki at kung kanino nila ito na-adapt. And also, they believe na yung mga values nila na yun ay yun yung tama dahil they are the values of their particular culture. Organizational culture fulfills four important functions. First, it conveys a sense of identity for the organizational members. The more clearly an organization shared perceptions and values to their employees, the more strongly their employees will feel they are part of the organization and that they are unique from other organizations. It can even represent a source of pride in an organization. Next is, it facilitates the generation of commitment to something larger than itself. Then the third one is, it enhances social system stability. It is a social mechanism that shapes and guides people's thoughts, values, and beliefs na kumokontrol sa kanilang behavior. Culture becomes the source of control through messages contained in rituals, stories, and ceremonies that relate to the organizational members' desired behaviors. Then the last one is, culture serves as a sense-making device that can guide and shape behavior. Through its components, elements, and dimensions, it dictates the adopted organizational structures, the organizational behavior, and the cognitive functioning of individuals, such as their mental abilities, including learning, thinking, reasoning, remembering, problem-solving, and decision-making, that affect their judgment or decision-making processes kapag mayroon silang kinakaharap na problema or like environmental phenomenon. In other words, organizational culture is the main guide that shows individuals how to interpret and respond to the certain problem or environmental phenomenon. In particular, it determines the efficiency of one person or an organization in receiving information and then analyzing and interpreting it. According to Tefesi and Bartlett, an organization's culture is likely to be especially influenced by key characteristics of the industry in which it operates. Organizations are founded on industry-based assumptions about customers, competitors, and society. And yun yung nagiging basis ng organization para ma-form or mabuo yung organizational culture nila. Yung isang organization, wala sila agad na organizational culture hanggat hindi pa sila nakakapag-gather ng information and data about their target customers, their preferences and likes, and yung appropriateness nung services or products to make sure na mabebenta at bibilhin ng customers. And at sa competitors naman, mas dapat nilang higitan ito. In the hospitality industry, being customer-focused or centered and developing market-oriented practices appeared to be a widely shared value among the international hospitality organizations. Similarly, as a result of pressure from the community, customer groups, and society, hospitality organizations have adopted socially responsible values in their management practices and daily operations. Formation of strategy involves setting widely shared objectives, teamwork, and regular communication with the decentralized management structure. Yung pagpaform ng strategies hindi lang nanggagaling sa top management, kundi kailangan din yung respond from other department in the organization. Kaya mahalaga yung teamwork, maayos yung communication at pare-pareha sila ng objectives para mas maging maganda yung strategies na maihahanda nila. Implementation of strategy requires understanding the core values of the organization, and if appropriately managed, strong culture leads to wide participation and support of organizational members to the implementation of strategy. The power and organizational culture are centered around a number of individuals with a strong emphasis on the performance of these individuals in forming short-term tactics rather than long-term goals. Both the formation and implementation of strategy are exposed to the risk of organization being too dependent on certain individuals. Nakadepende sila sa leader kasi tinuturing nga silang as exceptional individuals and they tend to disregard some important factors. There is always an issue of organizational members commitment, and support of a strategy that makes strategy implementation difficult.
The influence of organizational structure. So, organizational structure can be defined as the coordination of workflow and communication and management of authority relationship in an organization. So, ang organizational structure ay isang sistema na nag-outline kung paano tinuturo ang mga activities upang makamit ang mga layunin ng isang organization. So, ang mga activities na unang tinuturo para maging maayos ang isang organization is yung rules, roles, and responsibilities. So, alam naman natin na kailangan muna natin malaman kung ano yung mga rules and roles natin sa isang kumpanya para magawa natin yung mga responsibility natin as part of the company. And also, the organizational structure also determine how information flows within the levels within the company. According to Altinay and Altinay 2004, Hole 1991, Mitchberg 1979, Ritchie and Riley 2004, organizational structure can be defined as the coordination of workflow and communication and management of authority relationship in an organization. So, organizational structure influence the way tasks, duties, activities, coordination, communication, and resources allocations procedures are being organized in an organization. There are several types of organizational structure can be seen in HNT organizations. And also, each type of organization structure has its own advantage and disadvantage in developing and implementing strategies. So the first one is the functional structure. So the functional structure, the responsibility of an organization are divided in this type of structure according to the organization's primary roles. So functional structure is based on functional activities undertaken by an organization such as operation, marketing, human resources, and finance. So, for example, in a small hotel, there may be a several functions department that include the front office, the food and beverage, or the F&B. Next is security, marketing, human resources management, and finance and security. So, an functional organization structure is a structure used to organize workers that they are grouped based on their specific skills and knowledge. So, advantage and disadvantage of functional structure. So, in the functional organizational structure, it would be easy to make decisions, communicate with subordinates, and closely control the processes and outcomes. However, the disadvantage is in large organizations, functional structure would not work since cooperation and input from multi-divisions and units would be needed. The second one is a multi-divisional structure. It refers to having separate division based on products, services, and geographical areas. So, in multi-divisional structure, one parent organization's own subsidiaries that use the same name and the brand. So, the Walt Disney Enterprise is perfect multi-divisional structure example. And various division and functional units keep the massive entertainment empire afloat and successful. Advantage and disadvantage of multi-divisional structure. In divisional structure, each division may be able to develop and implement its own strategies, but it may not allow input and cooperation from other businesses, units, and regions. And if each division is independent, so again, some businesses units may go into different initiatives that may not support the corporation's overall mission and vision. Third one is matrix structure. So function departments such as marketing, human resources management, finance, research, and development are assigned to work with one or more product or geographic business units. So in a matrix structures, individuals work across teams and projects as well as within their own department or function. For example, a large hotel group such as Intercontinental Hotel and Resorts have these matrix organizational structures where the function, department, and specific business units work together, and there are multiple reporting lines. And in addition, this structure employees have dual reporting relationship. So the main objective of this structure is to provide both flexibility and more balanced decision making. Advantage and disadvantage of matrix structure. So the matrix type of organization structure would facilitate input and cooperation from multiple business units as well as from the function areas. However, it may be complicated and bureaucratic and time-consuming to get input and to buy it from different units and functional areas. Therefore, managers in H&T organizations should first assess the limitations of their type of organizational structure in strategy development and implementation. So, they need to know what is the best organization structure to get the better outcome of the one structure. So, issue that H&T organization need to assess is whether their organization has a centralized or decentralized organizational structure. So, later on, matatakal natin yung kung ano ba yung centralized and decentralized structure. So, centralized structure. So, if an H&T organization has centralized structure, this means that the decision-making power and responsibility are held by the top management. So, centralization is a business structure in which one individual makes the important decision, such as resource allocations, and they provides the primary strategic direction for the company. So most small businesses are centralized in that the owner make all the decision regarding products, services, strategy, the direction, and most other significant areas. However, a business does not have to be small to be centralized. So Apple is an example of business with a centralized management structure. So many businesses is rapidly changing the technology environment and have a centralized form of management structure. So the decision made by the lower level management are limited in a centralized environment. So the advantage of centralized organization include clarity in decision making. Next is streamlined implementation of policies and initiatives, and control over the strategic direction of the organizations. So the primary disadvantage of centralized organizations can include limited opportunities for employees to provide feedback and a higher risk of inflexibility. Next one is decentralized structure. So decentralized organization structure would facilitate communication and the development of the trust between top management and their employees. In such a management structure would facilitate the decision making, as employees would be able to express their ideas without going through unnecessary levels. So this would enable a faster recognitions of feasible ideas in decision making. So in addition, a decentralized structure would lead to wide participation of organizations member to strategy formulation and implementation, and thus they would take the ownership of the strategy process. So with a decentralized structure, strategy development and implementation would be smoother, as organization members at different levels will have more knowledge and awareness of the issue about the different markets and take more ownership of the process. So many businesses operate in markets and industry that are highly competitive. So in order to be successful, a company must work hard to develop a strategic competitive advantage that distinguish the company from its peers. So to accomplish this, the organizational structure must allow the organization to quickly adopt the take advantage of opportunities, and therefore many organizations adopt the decentralization management structure in order to maintain a competitive advancement. There are numerous advantages of decentralized management, such as quick decision and response time, and it is important for decision to be made and implemented in a timely manner. So in order to remain competitive, it is important to take advantage of opportunities that fit within the organization strategy. Next is better ability to expand company. So it is important for the organizations to constantly explore the new opportunities to provide goods and services to its customer. Next, skilled and specialized management. So organizations must invest in developing highly skilled employees who are able to make sound decisions that help the organization achieve its goal. Next is increased morale of employees. So the success of an organization depend on its ability to obtain and develop and retain highly motivated employees. So by empowering employees to make decisions, it is one way to help increase employees' morale. Next is better use of lower middle management. So many tasks must be performed in order to achieve success in an organization. So decentralized organizations often rely on lower and middle management to perform many of these tasks. So this allow managers to gain valuable experience and expertise in different areas. So with a decentralized organization structure can be an advantage for many organizations, and there are also disadvantages to this type of structure, including coordination problem. It is important for an organization to be working toward a common goal. So, because of decision making is delegated in a decentralized organization, it is often difficult to ensure that all segments of the company are working in a consistent manner to achieve the strategic goal of the organization. So, next is increased administrative costs due to duplication of effort. So, because of similar decisions need to be made and activities undertaken across all divisions of the organization, decentralized organizations are susceptible to duplicating effort, which result in inefficient and increased costs. Next is informal structures. So the informal organizational structures, it refers to group being formed by managers and executives from different function areas, and management level based on their friendship, habits, political views, religious affiliation, and other reasons. So in informal organizational structure, your business doesn't operate under the guidelines of a written document that spells out the rules, regulation, and chain of command. So under this structure, your business operates by a system developed by your employees who are proven effective. So clubs or social network are example of informal organizations. So both type of organizations share many features in common, but they also have meaningful differences. So developing an appropriate organizational structure to facilitate the strategy development and implementation process has been highlighted as a precondition of exploiting market opportunities. Bureaucratic obstacles and control-oriented approaches to decision-making the motivative organization member and thus hinder proactive organizational behavior. So in particular, it discouraged the expression of novel and innovative ideas, team, and more important, it negatively impact organizational learning. So about customer and competition. Therefore, in order to be able to take the advantage of the opportunities in the market by acting swiftly before the competitors, H&T organizations need to adopt the decentralized structure with an open and transparent communication. Simon 2000 introduced a model called the levers of control that aims to strike a balance between formality and flexibility in an organization. So this model suggests that control systems should be used in such a way that rather than inhibiting innovative behavior. So they set a clear direction and focus the employees and inspire them to respond to the strategic priorities. So boundary system ensure that employees work within the acceptable domain of organizational activity. 4 levers of control. So the first one is the diagnostic system. So this focus attention on the goals, achievement for the business and for each individual in the business. So in order to achieve our goals, we need to focus. So kahit saang bagay naman, kailangan nating mag-focus para maging better yung outcome. So we need to give the opportunity to the managers to measure outcomes and compare results with the present profit plans and performance goals. Next is interactive system. So this give managers tools to enforce consistently and guide creative search processes. So managers use one system interactively such as profit planning system, this report plan and actual revenues and expenses, and the intelligence systems that will report the information about social, political, and technical business issues. And also, you need to do day-to-day actions and create creative experiment that can be connected into a cohesive pattern that responds to strategic uncertainties. Next is belief system. So management's visions expressed in the mission statement and credos motivates organization participants to search for and create values and the desired level of the performance, and also how to manage the internal and external relationship. So a belief system is the explicit set of organizational definition formally communicated by senior managers through mission statements and credos that gives basic values, purpose, and direction. And also, it tells how the organization create values and the desired level of the performance, and how to manage external and internal relationship. Next is boundary system. So this system ensures that the organizational members' activities fall within the acceptable domain of the activity. So without any boundary system, you can create opportunity-seeking behavior, and the experimentation can dispel the resources of the organization.
So let's talk about the organizational context in the international perspective. All of the elements that exist outside the boundaries of the hospitality and tourism organization may kanya-kanya itong potential to affect the entire organization or kahit man lang any part of it. When an organization expands its operation beyond its national borders, it is applicable to all of the influences present in the host country's environment as well as the generalized international environment conditions. Pero meron pa ring mga bagay na nakakapag-prevent sa hospitality and tourism organization na makapag-implement ng strategy nila ng maayos. And ito yung political risk, economic barriers, cultural differences, and technological limitations. That's why important sa bawat organization na maintindihan nila na mabuti yung mga impacts ng international environment sa paggawa nila ng strategy and sa pag-implement nila ng maayos. Otherwise, it may lose opportunities, allocate its resources improperly, take unnecessary risks, and end up losing its assets, which is hinder to survival and prosperity. And hindi naman gugustuhin yun ng kahit anong organization. And nabanggit kanina na pwedeng mag-take ng unnecessary risk yung mga organization kapag hindi nila na-implement na maayos yung mga strategy nila. Which risk in a broad sense occurs whenever anyone must make a choice and the potential outcome involve uncertainty. For example, a manager is faced with a decision in which the alternatives involve estimated potential gains and losses that are not certainties, which will make the situation risky. So, dito na papasok yung tatlong main forms of risk, which are political, economic, and socio-cultural. Sa unang risk, which is the political, it is the potential for governmental actions or politically motivated events na makakaapekto talaga sa long-term profitability and operations ng isang organization. Isa sa mga example nito is yung terrorism, conflicts and unrest, changes in government, pagbabago sa international policies or relations in between sa iba't ibang country, and pwede rin na pagbabago sa business laws or investments regulations. In addition to that, ang naapektuhan dito sa political risk is the investors in international businesses and investment fund portfolios. So, investors and organizations must examine its potential by deeply examining the location's history, political institutions, and governmental forces. So, the next one is yung economic. It is the level of uncertainty about the ability of a country to meet its financial obligations, and the level of economic development of a country to generally determine its economic stability, and as a result, its relative risk to a foreign affiliate. So, masusukat itong economic risk sa pagtingin kung yung isang government pa ay kaya nila magbayad pabalik ng mga utang nila. For example, nito is yung restrictions on the convertibility of local currency into foreign currency, restrictions on the repatriation of capital, profit, and management fees, restrictive labor laws, unique taxation policies, and licensing agreements. So the last one will be socio-cultural risk, which refers to differences and similarities between home and host country consumer markets. When a manager lacks market knowledge about the target consumers in the receiving country, the country will most likely face this risk, just like failing to adapt global business models to the local market. Alam naman nating lahat na malaking influence yung consumers' characteristics, attitudes, and behaviors sa isang culture. So, when a company moves into a new market, business model should be modified to reflect local preferences, customs, and habits. Dapat alam nila or ma-adapt nila kung anong gusto ng tina-target nilang consumer. In this kind of risk, dapat talaga yung bawat organization is willing sila to work with others from diverse backgrounds. With that said, dapat aware yung bawat organization, yung home and host country consumer markets, about the culture and cultural differences. And that involves yung language, customs, and appearance ng mga consumer. So, the short-term effectiveness and long-term survival of organizations is nade-determine based dun sa actions na gagawin nila in response sa external environments and sa risk na makakaharap nila. Organizational members' perceptions and interpretations of the organization's environment and the response strategies are shaped by the international organization's context. Example of this is yung risk-averse organizational culture. Dinidiscourage nila yung international risk-taking and would not support a strategy that encourage market presence in countries kung saan yung political, economic, or socio-cultural is madalas nilang nakakaharap. Which that means sa bawat organization, yung mga decision na gagawin nila is nanggagaling talaga doon sa mga taong nasa mataas yung pwesto sa bawat organization. Where there will be an intense flow of information, experience, and knowledge na matatransfer dun sa mga employees na mabababa ang pwesto, kung saan mas familiar sila sa local country market conditions and culture. Importante talaga magkaroon ng communication between senior management teams and to their employees para maiwasan yung misinterpretation emerging market problems. In that case, to reduce operational risk, kailangan ng cross-functional interfaces such as collaboration among different departments sa isang organization like marketing, human resource, and finance functions, which that would allow access to a larger pool of knowledge and information na pwedeng mag-come up yung isang organization sa alternative solutions to take that risk. The risk of involvement in countries with varying social, economic, political, and business conditions can only be minimized kapag naintindihan na nila yung systematic approach to management internationally. Kung hindi nila naintindihan yung cultural differences internationally and taking unnecessary political and economic risks due to the inappropriate organizational culture and strategy management, maaapektuhan talaga nila yung perception ng customers, employees, shareholders, suppliers, and other stakeholders groups of the organization's activities. No organization wants to be taken down. So, if any managers are to act strategically and plan the actions they want their organization to take, mas maganda na magkaroon sila ng ideas about this and about how others in their environment will act and adapt their organizational context according sa pagbabago ng dynamic conditions ng international environment. So what are the key takeaways in this whole chapter? In an organization's environment, it is comprised of different important factors that have influence on and bearing of its functioning. It is also essential to identify an hospitality tourism company stakeholders, tangible and intangible assets, core competencies, and distinctive competencies. When analyzing the internal environment of hospitality and tourism organization, it is essential to look at 4 functional areas, which are operations, marketing, finance, and human resources, to identify strengths and weaknesses. Next is the organizational structure, culture, and leadership. It is the 3 important factors that influence both strategy, formation, and implementation. Organizations need to manage the centralization and decentralization organizational structure continue in order to have a certain degree of formality in the organization while leaving room for empowerment to nurture innovative, opportunities-seeking employees. An understood and successfully managed organizational culture can lead to innovative business practices and sustainable sources of competitive advantage. It is important that we understand the likely impacts of international environment on an organization's international functioning. Otherwise, Yung managers sa future may fail to respond to the opportunities or take unnecessary risk. Lastly, when analyzing hospitality and organization's internal environment, it is recommended to look at all of the preceding areas. These suggested analyses are not alternative to others, but they complement each other by each providing a different and complementary perspective. And that's all for our report in Chapter 3, the organizational context.